Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Legendarium Green Team. Today, we'll be discussing Shards of Honor, the 1986 book by science fiction grandmaster Lois McMaster Bujold, the first published book of the Vorkosigan Saga. It's one of my favorite military science fiction series, and I'm not alone in that today. Joining me are Panda,
Hi.
Little Red Book,
Hello.
Seeker,
Hello.
and Colonel Rabbit.
Hello, hello.
Why don't we start with a brief refresher about who's read the Vorkosigan Saga and who hasn't? I've definitely read it.
I have as well, multiple times.
I have read all of it, but only some books multiple times.
This is my first time.
This is my first time as well.
Awesome. For the newbies here, Lady S would love to know how people are vibing with her writing and character work. The character work is probably the most gripping thing about Bujold for me, especially in this book. But what do you feel?
Well, of what I've read of her, she does a really good job on the character work of her primary characters, but her co-stars, they can be they're definitely just setting and background.
Okay. So I have read other Bujold works before, so I know what she's capable of. In this case, I did find the writing a bit sparse. I do think that she does spend a lot more of her word count on the characters themselves and dialogue. What I found is this is quite a dialogue heavy book. And for me, I really enjoyed it because there is a lot of you glean a lot of the interpersonal character relationships through the dialogue. And it also makes it for a faster reading experience, and she doesn't really bog down the writing with unnecessary, like, adjectives and descriptions and things. But so if you're looking for a much more immersive world, this is probably not quite it, at least not with just this one book. But for me, I was more interested in what was happening with the characters and how they were going to end up. So I really enjoyed it.
Nice.
Okay. And for the returners, how do you feel about coming home to the Vorkosigan Saga?
It's home. I just feel at home
It
in
is.
this series. This is one of my favorite books in the Vorkosigan Saga. It's like I'm not sure how to say it. It's Cordelia is just so fabulous. Like she's just such an amazing character. And I love her so much. And sadly, she's not the main character in most of the books, is what I would say to that. But she's wonderful. And I actually found Arlen a much deeper character.
You
Than
mean Errol?
Errol, whatever. Errol is a much deeper character than I experienced in other reads through this book.
Don't worry, I can't remember any of the names right now. I'll just be referring to people as title and position and
Man, we're having
there's a
so
lot of
many
names.
name issues.
Well, Red's on the podcast.
There's Lady Captain. There's
Look, I appreciate a book series that has ranks and changes in ranks.
And now he's a lieutenant.
Ensign to lieutenant, commander to captain, all sorts of
To
fun
Commodore.
changes.
To
Commodore.
To Admiral and back again.
Wait, are we keeping this part spoiler free?
We've not mentioned any
we
of the
haven't-
characters.
This is spoiler free.
I'm just keeping
Yes,
okay,
yes,
yes.
we're keeping that.
It's teaser, but yeah.
yes, okay.
We have a question from Nat, which is why should you start Vorkosigan with this book, or why should you not? I think probably our returners will have more to say about this than the newbies, but let's get the newbies in here first. Do you think this made for a good first book? Do you want to read on?
Yes, I do want to read on. I mean, because this is the only Vorkosigan book I've read, I would say, yeah, sure, this was a great starting point.
It wasn't a bad one.
Yes, it didn't put me off the series. It didn't leave
Yeah.
me confused. So, yes, I could follow.
Okay. Seeker?
It didn't turn me off the series, but as I'll explain more at elevator pitch time, I think the romance was just a little bit heavy for my personal taste in this.
Mm.
Hmm.
It lacked, like, there was romance in Pen and Des, but it was leavened by a lot of really good comedy, and you
Mhm.
just don't have that here. And you have some adventure, but not enough to compensate in my mind.
So you're saying you're not a romance guy?
I am definitely not a romance reader, although I have tried
Yeah.
to read them. It's a chore that I inflicted upon myself a few years ago just to try to understand the genre.
Hey, at least you
Yeah.
gave it a try.
True. It's not every genre is for everybody. I would push back against the lack of comedy, though. I think there's a lot of comedy.
Maybe I just don't get her style in this book, but
It can be a little hard to note the understated comedy in this book, given the serious backdrop of some of the other themes
Yeah.
and what's happening, given, all of the action and suffering and torture.
right. Well, one thing I've noticed about comedy is how subjective it is. I think
Very much.
Lift is the funniest character ever written that's outside of a Terry Pratchett book. Yet I know people who can't stand her and find her just annoying. So,
I feel like you're understating the people who say she's annoying. but your point is taken.
I do think that potentially it's the comedy in here isn't like slapstick necessarily. It's a bit more subtle and more sarcastic in nature, especially when it comes from Cordelia, like what she's
Mhm.
thinking, what she says. And I did note that there are some like drastic tonal shifts from like levity to then something very serious. So it's a little uneven in that sense.
Like Steady Freddy.
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't even vote for him.
Steady Freddy, yeah, that's an obvious comedy.
Yeah.
But one thing, noting that it's the sarcastic comedy, that is something I never pick up in real life either. I'm never sure if it's a joke or serious or
Mm,
some combination. So
Okay.
that's fair then.
Well, I think that Shards of Honor is, technically speaking, one of the weaker books in the series.
Mm.
Although it does come first in publication order, you risk having readers think, this isn't interesting enough that I need to read more. And I will say most of those are going to be men.
Yeah, you can get a genre disconnect too, because it is by far the most romancy book in the series, with
No.
maybe one exception. With one exception.
Mm,
One exception. One exception.
Okay.
The returning readers know which one I'm talking about, but
it's the most romancy one that doesn't have like a mystery also,
Okay.
yes.
with maybe one exception.
Oh my gosh.
So I guess what I would say is this is half a book.
Mm.
Yes, that's also true.
Yes. It was originally written as a work under the working title Mirrors, and the second half of that book was later turned into the novel Barrier, and then the two were later combined with the short story Aftermaths into the book Cordelia's Honor.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And Aftermath kind of works as a interlude
Mhm.
Okay.
between the two books or the two halves of the book. And it's a very short book. And I just would say, give her a try. Give her a try. She's gonna delight you. And it is very funny in places. But I agree with Panda, it's uneven.
Yep. And I would say that a lot of those male readers that get turned off by not enough maybe action happening in this, even though there's action all over the place,
Yep.
Mhm.
will be happier with Barrier because
Yes.
there's a good climax to that book.
Okay.
There's a lot more visible action going on.
I actually already started it and I am enjoying it.
And also we get Barrier and politics fleshed out much better.
Right. There's a lot of political intrigue. I mean, there is in this book, but it's kind of background.
Yeah.
It's also all from Cordelia's viewpoint, and she's a newcomer to Barrier and politics and doesn't really want to have to learn all that much about it for most of the novel.
Because
Right.
she didn't really have a reason to.
No, she didn't. It's kind of academic to her. She
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
thought Barryar would really figure all that much in her life. She was doing an astronomical survey. We've kind of touched on this, but Stormrunner wants an official answer to is this a romance? My answer's definite yes.
Yes, as
Yes.
well. Newbies.
I think.
So, good.
Oh, I was gonna say I think Seeker's gonna say yes too.
Honestly, I missed the question.
Is this book a romance?
Oh, yeah, duh.
Unanimous.
I would say yes, it is a romance because that the romance plays such a heavy part in it, but it's not like what you would think of with the bodice rippers or whatever that kind of
It's
Yeah, it's
still
not
romance.
Harlequin.
military sci-fi, it's still space
Yep,
opera, but it's also
Right, but
absolutely.
this is a character-driven sci-fi, and
Mhm.
all the character interaction is driven by romance.
yeah.
Yep,
All the motivations are romantic.
but also patriotic.
Yeah, I mean, like
Well, yeah, but you read a vampire romance and it's driven by bloodlust too, but that's another side point.
we'll get to it in the spoilers part, but there was a moment that happens in this book, and I was just like, "Where the hell did it come from?" It to me, it felt very from left field, and so for the first, like, good chunk of this book, I did not read it as a romance. It wasn't until later that I was like, "Oh, okay, I see why people say this is a romance."
That's fair. There is a very apt quote for what you're saying that's also later in the book, but I'll
Okay.
refrain from it right now.
Yandabacha asks, what is your elevator pitch for the book?
I want Seeker to go first.
My elevator pitch for this book is intelligent, courageous woman tames the savage warrior.
The
Interesting.
Savage. Okay.
I mean,
I could get behind
he's
that.
got. Oh, sorry. Tames the savage warrior with a heart of gold.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
All right.
I
Okay.
agree. I can go next. I said, at the heart of it, this book is about people and interpersonal relationships, the complexity of it, as well as the tragic nature and beauty of being human and being a part of a society, just set in space and worlds that are not Earth. And if you want to read smart political intrigue, effective and witty social commentary with competent characters, then this is the series for you.
Hey, you get a lot more
I
out
like
of it than
that.
I did.
She goes on long elevator rides.
Yeah, being succinct is not necessarily my forte.
No, I'm not being succinct. That was literally all my takeaway was,
Yeah.
oh, this is Beauty and the
It was a
Beast
good
in
one.
space.
I was gonna say it's Beauty and Beast in space. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. And I would also just add, it's like what Panda said, Bujold is very good at making smart, competent characters.
Mhm.
Yes. No, I love the fact that the heroine is competent and intelligent, and it's not all based on teenage sex appeal.
Yeah.
And also to quote the book,
Also in her 30s.
not an yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
yeah, she's not an imitation male either.
Right.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
She
Mhm.
is very,
So, I
very
mean, it'd kind
feminine.
of be hard to do a competent romance with an imitation male.
Uh, you say that, but I'm in this room.
Are you saying you're a competent imitation male or female? Male? Whatever.
I'm saying I've read a lot of books with imitation males.
Yeah. That were romances?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, urban fantasy is loaded with female imitation males. That's
Uh-huh.
but
Look,
I
cyborgs
just
really
hadn't read any
shouldn't
of them
have
that were.
gender.
Well, what I want to say
Well,
about that
yeah.
is that her power doesn't come from punching people in the face.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And there's an issue with that in a lot of modern action movies. Her power comes from
Yes, please spare me from the 100-pound twig that can throw a 300-pound wrestler around.
right. And that's what I think that Seeker was driving at.
Fair. Yes.
Like I said, it's Beauty and Beast in space.
There are actually a couple scenes where she has to like drag somebody heavy, and it's like, oh, this is hard.
Yeah.
It's not
Or
going
even
to
just
work out
digging the
well.
grave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
My elevator pitch is this is military science fiction space opera whose climax, many books down the line, ends up pulling dozens of plot threads together to make the best romantic comedy I've ever read. It's full of heart and soft humor, and the heroes burn bright with moral courage, tempered by intelligence, if not always wisdom.
I call foul. You just elevator pitched the entire series.
Yeah.
Which you have to
I thought it was
do.
supposed to be just this book.
Yeah, Panda and I have not read the
That's how
entire
I sell things.
series.
That's how I sell things.
Yes, but like,
Look, it's a couple million words. Don't you want to read
We're
it?
so unhinged.
We're pitching the eye of the world, not the wheel of time.
objection
Boy.
overturned, overruled. You can't pitch Eye of the World without Wheel of the Time.
Thank you, Rabbit. Thank you, Rabbit.
Oh my god.
Let's get back on plot, guys.
Okay.
Wait, did Rabbit give his pitch?
And not everybody has to have one.
I don't have a full pitch. I mean, like, I can't beat Kip's pitch. So
Okay,
I'm not even
okay.
going to try. But
So
I'm
he
just gonna
said
say,
ditto to Kip.
I did a ditto to Kip, but also, like, I would just start by saying, yeah, I would recommend it with, if you really like the character-driven work, Bujold, that's Bujold's specialty. So if you want to read something on that focus, give it a try.
Cool.
Now, Nat asks us something that we absolutely can't answer subjectively and don't have the merits to answer objectively. So let's give it a go. This book is nearly 40 years old. Is it on the way of becoming a sci-fi classic, or is it one already?
Huh.
I think that when you're declared a Grandmaster of Science Fiction by the American Society of Science Fiction Writers, you've written classics.
Yeah.
Especially when this is her sci-fi work, right? This series is her sci-fi work.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And this is the start of it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yes, I say it is a classic.
And I'd say if this book is still being talked about by book lovers, then yeah, it qualifies. I mean, how many other books written at that time none of us could even name, much less, know anything about?
Okay, but a lot of classics are still talked about too. So I guess that
Well,
is the point.
Yeah.
It means it's a classic.
I think it is already one, and I think it's just a more underrated classic, and hopefully will become more hyped and more discovered because of this podcast.
Yeah, like I mentioned Penn and Des to a friend of mine who's also really into books, and he said, "Well, who wrote it, and has she written anything I might have heard of?" And I said, "Vorkosigan," and he goes, "Oh yeah, I know that one. I haven't read it, but I know about it."
Okay.
Nice.
Nice.
I mean, it's more of a more mention than like the integral trees or whatever.
What? I have not
The
even
what?
heard of that.
I think that's
That's Larry Niven.
point
Oh.
taken.
Okay.
The only thing I've read of Larry Niven is the Draco Tavern.
I have no idea what
See?
that
Yeah,
is.
yeah. neither do I.
I might have the name of the tavern wrong, but it's basically this weird stuff happening in this tavern that's kind of like it was described to me as this world's version of Mos Eisley, and the whole thing takes place in
Oh.
the tavern.
Okay, now I want to read that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we basically already covered Chesky's question, or at least Red has. What are your thoughts about reading Barry R directly after this? I think that's where you should go, even though technically it wasn't the next published book. But if you really didn't vibe with Shards of Honor, if you really did not like Cordelia as a narrator or lead character, go on to Warrior's Apprentice instead of Barry R. That's my
Okay.
take on it.
Well, which one are we going to do next?
Barry R.
Barry
There you
R.
are.
Okay, there we go.
But you're only skipping one book if you go to Warrior's Apprentice.
Warrior's Apprentice makes more sense if you've read Barry R.
Yes,
Mm.
a
I
lot
agree.
more sense. I would say if you're going to read one book of Barry R and Shards of Honor, it should be Barry R.
Mm.
For the sake of the rest of the series. For as an introduction to the rest of the series, I would add.
Got it. So we should read Shards of Honor more as like a prequel in that case.
I think that makes sense.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm like 60 pages into Barry R and having a grand old time.
Wait till you hit Warrior's Apprentice.
Can't wait.
Warrior's Apprentice.
And I apologize for when we eventually hit Ethan of Athos, because it was another one of her first written works that eventually got published later, but it still
Ah.
reads like one of her earlier works.
Gotcha. So would you recommend reading, was it Aftermath? That's the short story?
So you've
Uh,
probably already read
That
it.
was in my version of.
Yeah,
So
it was
it
in
is
my
the
version.
epilogue.
Oh.
It's the epilogue scene of
Oh.
yeah.
Okay, got it. Great.
Yeah.
Love it.
Okay. So what would people give as a rating to this book?
4 stars.
When I looked it up on my Goodreads, and when I read it years ago and then forgot I completely read it, at the time I rated it 3 stars.
Nice. Okay.
So
Would
it
you
didn't
change
make
that
an
rating?
impression on me. Um, yes, because of the quality of the writing that I can now appreciate. But
Mm,
as fun entertainment, it's still 3 for me.
Okay.
fair.
So maybe a 3.5?
Yeah.
I'm tempted to give a similar rating, but I bump it up to like a 3.9, so that goes to a 4.
We're rounding up.
Yeah. In the context of Bujold's works, which I'm a huge fan of her, of as a whole, I would give it 3 stars and
Okay.
relative to her other stuff. Maybe 2.5. But in context of just like everything in general, 4.
Mm,
I think I'm gonna say Rabbit has it right. You can definitely tell it's early in her career, and the way her works develop later are so much better. But it's such a well. Also, I'm a fan of romance, so
Yeah.
It's a comfort
Yeah.
read.
yeah.
It doesn't matter what its rating is for you. It's the comfort read.
It's definitely
I
getting
mean,
bumped up by the time it was written.
look, I love some genuinely bad books, just like I love some
yes, you
genuinely
do.
bad movies. Doesn't mean they're good, but this is a good book. But I would give it a 4 in just what's out there in the world.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When it comes to romance, to quote Nero from Quo Vadis, I haven't the glands for it.
Oh, we gotta get Seeker on a romance episode, like an
Oh,
actual.
God.
A
We can
bodice
invite
shipper.
your wife on. It'll be fun.
No, my wife absolutely refuses to do any of these. She's like, yeah, that's your hobby. Leave me out of it.
Okay. I think it's about time to dive into spoiler talk. We're almost half an hour into this episode.
I know, right?
Oh, it's gonna be a long one. And this is a short book too.
Okay. Do we have a plot summary?
My highly plagiarized and slightly modified plot summary here.
Parody's not plagiarism. There's a legal cutout.
Well,
Sorry.
whatever it is, it's obviously copied, and anyone who will recognize it will notice. 2 planets, both alike in dignity, in outer space where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these 2 foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their stand, whose misadventures piteous overthrows doth with their kingdom strife bury their blossomed love. The fearful passage of their death-marked love, and the countenance of their lord's rage, for honor betrayed is love lost, mind institutionalized, betrayed. 'Tis now the hour, traffic our stage, the which, if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend.
Love it.
I'll say,
Applause.
Well
yay.
done.
Anyone who
Well
didn't
done.
recognize that, this book obviously reminded me of Romeo and Juliet.
There definitely
But
is
with
some.
significantly less suicide.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Though it's close at a couple points.
yes, very.
Nat asks, why is Cordelia the best?
Because she's Cordelia.
I do have an answer for this, and it's kind of like a more general answer about Lois McMaster Bujold and her writing. Something that I really appreciated is you can tell she's a mother. Like it's a very female perspective in the writing, and she amplifies, like she just writes the female character perspective very well as if, it's firsthand, which makes
Mhm.
sense. And the things that she chooses to highlight, since we're in spoiler territory now, how she puts into words like a mother spending so much time raising a son, and yet that son is just taken by the government and then, used to as a
Cut into the
tool.
war machine.
Or
Exactly,
a
right?
failure of politics.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then also the uterine replicators, that whole scene and sequence, it's just
He
her.
Arlen
Yeah,
is pregnant 17 times all at once.
over yeah. It's
Errol.
it's that
Errol, whatever.
is that kind of like real perspective that she puts into her work that I think is a huge highlight for Cordelia and for her characters in general.
hmm
Yeah.
And uterine replicators, I believe, will be one of the first inventions discovered if women ever completely control the sciences.
Oh, for sure. Could I tell you
It's
how
so hard
horrible being
though.
pregnant is? It's just terrible.
They're working on it with lambs, and there's been some fun like lamb in a bag things, but it's very
Lamb
hard.
in a bag.
Oh yeah, no, I completely accept that. I'm just saying that if women, like as I said, completely controlled the science, they just put everything else on hold and go, "We're not doing anything else till we get this figured out."
Yep.
Yeah, so
Meanwhile, us dudes are too busy inventing novel ways to kill each other.
Yeah. But
Mm.
I mean, women would figure out ways to kill each other too.
Oh,
We have
I'm
our
sure.
own.
But after they figured out the uterine replicator, so that their kids are safe while they do it.
Speaking of novel ways to kill each other, plasma mirrors make an appearance again, and I wouldn't be Kip if I didn't give a thumbs up to plasma mirrors.
Yeah, talk about being hoisted on your own petard.
Exactly. It's a purely defensive technology that wipes out the Barryaran fleet.
Mhm.
Oh, so jumping to that part, how do you guys feel about how basically the whole invasion plan is a gigantic way to assassinate
Evil men in
crown
green silk
prince?
rooms.
yep.
Yeah.
How do we feel about that? And
Brilliant.
Errol's
Dark.
participation in it.
The best way to hide a body is in a pile of bodies.
Yeah.
Yep. In a mountain.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I mean, from a Machiavellian imperial viewpoint, the only way to successfully take out your most powerful rivals is to do it in a way no one could suspect or credibly accuse.
The warmongers want to make war. Let them, and let them kill
Mhm.
themselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if a few soldiers die in the process, oh well, cost of doing business.
So is Errol a good or a bad person coming at it from this situation?
You're going to ask me to decide on Machiavelli's ethical orientation?
Yep, I sure
Jesus
am.
Christ.
I'm just
Uh,
gonna answer with a quote from Vorkosigan to Cordelia. But the emperor said if it wasn't done now, we would all be trying to do it ourselves 5 or 10 years down the road and probably botching the job and getting all our friends killed. Oh, sorry. I left the rest of the quote out.
But we get the point.
Yeah,
Mhm.
well, he goes on to say, like, when you have, like, all you have are evil choices.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What do you do? And
Yeah.
for him, it was also like, okay, if he doesn't do it, then somebody else will. And they
Mhm.
would probably do it in a much worse way. So at least he gets to control more or less the casualty, how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I honestly think that this is one of the lessons that has been mislearned in the last 50 years of global politics, is that inaction is also a choice and it is an action taken. Everybody is mad at people who do stuff, but the people who simply, could stop the violence, could intervene, could, but don't, they get away without blame. And I don't think that's right. I think they should be held responsible for what they didn't prevent.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I
Yeah.
It's another thing our culture series read through brings up.
Mhm.
I think that Errol is trying to be the best person he can be in the society
Yeah.
that he lives in.
Yes.
I agree. Regardless of what you think he's doing ethically, he's trying to create the most good with cards that he's given.
And with that, he got to design the retreat.
True.
Yep.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's why this book is called Shards of Honor, because he's
Right.
trying to be honorable, but he can't be in some senses.
And this also, if we cross this over with some of the the Dragonlance books, for example, I always found the quote good characters so annoying because they were eminently predictable and super easy to take advantage of.
Mm.
Mm. Yeah, not so easy here.
No.
Yeah.
Vorutier thought that he knew how to tease Errol and how to get him to bounce along to his strings, but in the end, it was exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
Right.
The evil man was actually the easiest one to cajole into putting
Mhm.
himself in harm's way and killing himself.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just the flip side of good. When you people who relish in their evil identity, who, play the chaotic evil in D&D, shall we say, they're just as easy to predict and manipulate as the lawful good types.
Yeah. I really like the quote that Vorkosigan said to Cordelia, and this is not like unique to this book. This is often quoted in other literature. But he says to her, leadership is mostly a power over imagination, and
Mhm.
never more so than in combat. The bravest man alone can only be an armed lunatic. The real strength lies in the ability to get others to do your work. Which, if you like this kind of stuff, The Dandelion Dynasty is also a great series to read, more on the fantasy side. But
Yeah, that is excellent.
it's exactly what you guys are saying, where and this is also why Cordelia is such a good character because she's more wily and she does show leadership in not with power, physical power, but
Right.
Yep.
with
Mhm.
interpersonal relationships.
I also love how she thinks on her feet.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when her crew comes to rescue her.
I was gonna say, of course you voted.
Yeah.
And it was
Speaking of just funny
unanimous.
lines.
Yeah. How come I can't get unanimous votes instead of you?
And she goes to rescue Vorkosigan, and she's like waving people into the like room closet, I guess it was, or something like
Uh-huh.
that. Come here, come here. Join our side. I'll give
Mhm.
you a medal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that and the end, her entire escape sequence is just masterfully
Mhm.
done.
Oh,
Right.
I love that fish tank interrogation scene.
Yeah. That's so good. The poor fish.
I mean,
She's like, oh, okay, which belt am I gonna?
oh,
Yeah.
right.
The psychiatrist is watching her the whole time.
I do want to say though that not to discount Cordelia's military training as well, because she is a captain and she has gone through that kind of training. So yes, she does have that skill set, but
Mhm.
Yeah,
also her wits.
she does some
Well,
good sniping.
Yeah,
remember, she's
Yeah.
a civilian captain, not a military captain
that's fair. Yes.
At the start.
at the
At the
start.
start.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
she's
Well,
fighting a shrink.
but she gets like 2 weeks of training to become a military captain. I don't think
But
that
she's
counts.
around the military people.
Ish.
Yeah.
She's still in command. She still has to
Right.
learn how to stun the crazy scientists.
But she's also fighting a shrink. And just as
Mhm.
an anecdotal example. I grew up with a brother that we constantly wrestled. Mom was always
Mhm.
yelling at us, but we still did it all the way up through our teen years. My boys, they never wrestled to my knowledge with each other or not. And there's a significant well, my older son
S-
is just
Skill
he's built
gap.
like a linebacker. What's that?
There's a skill
He's
gap
a
between them.
no, it's just my
No.
older son is, like I said, built like a linebacker, and my younger son is built like a geek.
Mm.
So, you know, when they were when my youngest son was like 3 years old, his brother's only about a year and a half, 2 years older than him. Sorry, my memory, whatever. The younger one would headbutt the older one while he's sitting down gaming or whatever he was doing. And then the older one would finally get annoyed and then
Uh-huh.
just drop his head so the younger one ran into it and their heads would
Uh-huh.
clash. And then the little one's like, "Ah, you know. So that's the level between them. Anyways, long story short, when my oldest son was about 17, he's already taller than me, and I only outweigh him because of belly fat. And we were doing something, and I forget what it was, but we needed him to go from this location to that location, and he was just being stubborn. It's like, no, I don't want to do it. I'm not in the mood, whatever.
Mhm.
And I just grabbed him from behind and held his arms to his side and picked him up by leaning back. And there was nothing he could do. He did not know
Mm.
how to break loose. Whereas me, who had wrestled my brother off and on, I'd have known exactly what to do. But, we just kind of stood there for 10 minutes as I walked him down the aisle. And that was the end of that. you know, so you don't need all that to say, you don't need a ton of skill if you know a few basic moves.
Right. Yeah.
Probably the longest winded way to say that ever.
It was
Hey,
entertaining
we're
though.
we're known for tangents. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Cordelia does fight Bathari briefly,
Yes.
and she just has to kind of
Mhm.
survive long enough for a drug ampule to work on him, but she
Yep.
Yeah,
only
gets 2
barely
ribs
does.
broken, but
Yeah,
I mean, she
Yeah.
still
well,
has to
it's
get the ampule in as well. That's I think the biggest thing that she does. It's impressive.
she does. Yes.
mhm,
Yeah. I mean, when you're going on these exploration expeditions, you never know what you're going to encounter. You've got to be ready, like physically as well. So she has
Yeah.
that
mhm.
training.
Yeah, she has to be fit.
I imagine that Beta Colony has some pretty like scoped out and well structured captain training classes for the expeditionary force and for the survey corps.
Yeah.
Mhm,
I bet that like I said, you got to be worried about those crazy scientists cooped up in a ship or in a camp
mhm.
for however long, and the captain has to be able to maintain order. And as far as I could tell,
Mhm.
she didn't have a security officer.
No, but she was a sharpshooter.
Yep.
Mhm.
and sh- and she did her like best secret agent moment was when she jumped up into the ceiling and shot 3 people.
Yep.
Right. That was
Mhm.
Which
amazing.
is a pretty good secret agent moment.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, yeah, no, she stormed that engine room on her own as a gift.
Well, she also had to make sure that the
Yeah,
guns
she had
were
to make
deactivated.
yeah, she
Yeah.
had to deactivate the guns.
I think it was more like a men can't do anything right moment.
I've
Kind
never
of
heard
was.
that before.
And you know what? She negotiated a lot better
It's true.
than any of the men on that ship would have.
That's
Mhm.
true.
And it definitely
Mhm.
helps that she was underestimated,
Oh yeah.
which
Oh
Yes.
is
yeah.
the definite downside of a machista culture is that an intelligent woman used to standing up for herself can just sweep the floor using the what do they call it? Being underestimated.
Yep.
Mhm.
Which I think brings us to our next question from Lammy Lambs. Is it reasonable to picture Charisma Carpenter in the role?
I do not know who that is.
No
I
idea
don't
who that
either.
is.
I'm
No idea
assuming
who that
that's
is.
Sabrina Carpenter, but like I don't know enough about her to know the answer.
Charisma Carpenter was in Buffy, but she's been in many other things since. She was a
As
Cordelia
who?
Chase. She was
Oh, the
a another
black-haired girl,
another
right?
Cordelia. She
Yeah,
was
the
the
black-haired cheerleader.
yes,
God, I
the
haven't seen
popular
Buffy since the
princess.
90s.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't say.
Okay, Lammy, just for you, I say absolutely.
If she was that old in Buffy, I think she'd be too old. She's got to be nearly 50 by now.
Technology.
She can't be that old now, right?
I say so I'm looking at her, and I know nothing about her work. I'm just looking at her physically, and I say no.
She's 54. Yeah. Okay, she
Yeah,
doesn't
she's
look
too
54
old.
though.
She just
That's what
looking at her,
Hollywood
she looks.
plastic surgery does.
Okay.
Eh,
I think
sorry,
she'd be
Lemmy.
fine, Lemmy. I think she'd
I
be
mean,
fine.
Tom Cruise still looks like he's 30.
And you know what?
Oh,
These books are about to take a time gap, so
Fair enough. An older Cordelia, yes.
yeah. Or we could also judge her on her younger age as well, because the
Hmm.
book's also old. So if they had made an adaptation when it deserved to get an adaptation 20 years ago,
20? Yeah, okay, yeah.
yeah, these books are old.
I mean, I guess if you're picturing like her and Buffy as Cordelia in this book, then sure.
I
Well,
mean,
in
she's
Buffy,
too
she
young.
was too
Too young
young.
when
In
she was
Buffy, she
Buffy.
was
Yeah.
like 18.
Oh,
Or at
well,
least her
then
character was.
never mind.
Panda
Buffy's
and I
still in
are
high
completely
school.
out of pop culture.
Okay, let's go. Let's go to some more character moments. Lady Sweden asks, "What was your first impression of Errol, and how did it change during the book?" And given that he is the primary romantic interest here and deuteragonist,
I
Panda's thinking hard.
I liked him as a person, and my general impression didn't change. I think he wore his heart on his sleeve the whole time.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I liked him more as the book went on. I found him more and more interesting as the book went on. And I honestly, when they first met and like as they're trekking to the whatever his like bunker,
The
whatever
supply
cavern thing.
cache.
Yes, the supply cache. I didn't really read tension, like romantic tension in their interactions, mostly because it was this captor prisoner situation going on. And so when he later on pops the question of, will you marry me? I was like, okay.
I do think it's somewhat intentional.
Yeah, but I saw that coming a mile away.
No, but the lack of romantic tension
Well, no,
as
see,
a
the romantic tension is there because, okay, so you take into account this guy comes from a military that not only shoots first, but burns down an outhouse for the fun of it.
Mhm.
And then, uses neural disruptors on unarmed or armed only with a stunner, complete non-threats, and inflicts the most brutal, incapacitating, permanent injuries imaginable. Yet he makes no aggressive actions towards her at all. There are no sexual innuendos, there's no harassment, there's no bullying. In fact, he goes out of his way to make her feel comfortable.
Mhm.
And for me, it's like, oh, okay, this dude's into her.
Gotcha. I read it more as that,
He's got a thing about prisoners.
he's got a thing of a
yeah,
prisoners.
like he is an honorable person
Yeah.
as opposed to the other people who basically perform the mutiny are not.
Yeah, but we don't know any of that in the beginning. All we know is he's a barbarian who comes from a barbarian warring culture.
I feel like it's pretty clear that, from in my eyes, that he's the paladin of the culture, for lack of a better term.
I mean, I agree that comes out later. I didn't draw that conclusion in the beginning.
I did.
And here's why, because she demands that her ensign is buried,
hmm
and he doesn't. Like,
Right, because
he
he's
has
into
no
her.
reason.
I don't
What?
I am not nearly as cynical about him as you are, apparently.
Yeah.
So, as my wife will testify, I am not much of a romantic.
But my point is the fact that he would, on first meeting, accommodate like this time-consuming thing, burying the whatever his name is.
Rosemont.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because that is an honorable thing. I mean, when you first
Okay,
see him,
let's
he's
let,
scary.
let's let's look at it this way. Let's assume that instead of what was her name again?
Cordelia.
Cordelia. Instead of Cordelia, the guy who got shot survives, and Cordelia is the one permanently injured.
Uh-huh.
And so he wakes up. It's a dude who wakes up with
Mhm.
another dude guarding him, who demands that they look after Cordelia and bury the dead. I
Mhm.
don't see him being as accommodating.
I absolutely do.
Okay.
I do too.
Yeah.
And I guess the reason why I think we can say that is because of how he treats other males. I mean, you could say, well, they're on his side. They're, you know,
Well,
Baryarans, but he's not he doesn't display as much of the sexist kind of.
I also don't think that saying that Errol treats men and women differently is the line that we want to be going down necessarily, given that
No, I'm not
he's
saying he
clearly
treats men and women
bisexual.
differently. I'm saying he treats her differently because he has a thing for her. And I
Sure.
just, switch the genders because that's the easiest way to,
yeah, but he doesn't have a
What, you
thing
think
for
Rosemont's not attractive?
Rosemont's dead.
How the hell
I mean,
should
I
I
guess,
know?
But in it,
is he into that?
Well, but like also with the mutineers, he did his best to save the mutineers' life when he could have just shot them or stunned them and took them into
Well,
custody
yes,
or
he
what.
followed the laws of war.
No, but like
Mm,
not just that. Like he did his best to actually make the mutineers back into his
Stand down.
allies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
stand
just
down.
I'm just way more cynical, I guess.
You really are. Wow.
Yeah.
So this makes me want to go back to the B guy name.
The B guy name.
Um,
Dubauer?
Which guy?
his flunky, who's kind of like crazy and psychopathic and
The
whatever.
Emperor's recording device.
Rathari.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how do you? I mean, the way he treats him
Mhm.
is really. He's like, this guy has some major issues, and so I'm going to give him this structure to so he can live in this structure, which is a military structure. So he kind of institutionalizes him, but it's
Mhm.
in a very caring way. I feel.
Mhm.
He even says,
Yeah.
"I almost had him fixed, and now they broke him again."
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, he definitely cares for his men.
I think he's just caring in general.
Right.
I think he's just honorable in general.
Yeah.
I agree with the honorable in general. Yes.
He wouldn't go as far as to be the one to suggest burying someone who died, but if his prisoner said, "I require,"
Well, no, he actively objected to it until she said, "I'm not moving till he's buried," and his choices were kill her, abandon her to die slowly, or do what she needed him to do.
and you think that's him being into her?
Pragmatism. What would be the pragmatic answer in that situation?
The pragmatic answer in that situation is to kill her and move on.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
But that's
And
not. But
in
that's
that,
not honorable.
Right, but that goes back to being his thing about prisoners. He's not his choices are not kill her and move on or
You can't
listen
just
to
kill your
her,
prisoner because they're mildly inconveniencing.
especially if
okay.
you're not Vorkosigan.
You might be making a point there that his code would not let him kill her, and therefore, faced with no other option, he does what he has to do to get her to shut up and go along with him.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he could have conked her out and like try to drag her.
No, I thought about that, but that's too impractical.
That's not very productive.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a hovercraft.
Or just left her, right? Like, what's she gonna do?
You know, I mean, what's he gonna do? You know, make a stretcher and drag her behind him? It's like, yeah, no, that won't
No,
work.
just be like, fine, you don't want to go with me, stay here. I took your stunner, I took your food.
Yeah.
Right, but then that violates his code of honor.
Yes.
Sure, but like, it's her choice.
Hey, I'm the one who was being cynical here.
You can't abandon your prisoners.
Yeah. To me, shooting her or not, or abandoning her are the same. In
It's
fact,
not
shooting
more
her is
Yeah,
more
but-
how we
merciful.
focus
But
on.
he could have done that, and he didn't.
Yes, and so I guess the only debate is it because of his honor or because he was already starting to be a bit into her? And I guess that's up to the reader.
I think it's up to the reader. And for me, the buildup, there was not really that much buildup to the marriage proposal, which is why I felt like it came out of left field. I was like, oh, I guess that's just how it's going to be.
Well, I mean, what's more romantic than oatmeal and blue cheese?
It's definitely how it appeared to our captain. You know, she did not see it
Yeah.
coming. It came, caught her completely off guard.
No, that's not true. She definitely has some thoughts.
Well,
About
she,
Well, getting proposed to
yeah,
is caught her off guard.
Yeah,
It-
no, she was already in love with him by then, but
Yeah.
I think she was like attracted to him, and she was battling it out internally about like why am I feeling this way? Should I be feeling this way?
well, she was attracted to him before they even made it to the uh, depot.
Yes.
She said, "When did I go from being afraid of him to being afraid for him?"
Well, they were
Yes.
both like, well, this happened to my friend. It was definitely about them.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. She pretty much accepts the proposal when she tells the dude that he's going to get a medal because she's Lady Vorkosigan.
I mean,
Yeah, but then
she
she
mentally
doesn't.
accepts it, right? She accepts that it's something she wants to do on a personal level, but not on a social or political level.
It's just
She
It's a
accepts
very-
that
it's
it's
very
something she has the
complicated.
power to do.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like even if she never accepted that marriage proposal, Errol was going to honor her giving out his word
hmm
Right.
Yeah.
in that circumstance. Absolutely. Because what would the kids say these days? He simps for her.
Oh.
That's annoying.
Oh.
I actually found it more impressive that his men believed that a woman who just claimed to be the future Lady Vorkosigan could give his word for him. I was
That's
like,
pretty
damn.
standard, I think. in Barrier
That's
and politics.
well, I was just gonna say that's seriously old school.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that is old school.
It's old school, but also like she's just supposedly his prisoner, but everyone knows that it's more than that.
Mhm.
The eyes.
Making jokes about it, and
Yeah,
Cordelia says they imagine that while hiking 40 kilometers a day, we have time for that sort of
Right.
Yeah.
Time or
and
energy.
Yeah. We're
Yeah,
30 and
We've
40.
got to do something about our eyes.
his original plan was 100 kilometers a day just for himself, right?
Yeah, before he got hurt.
Before
Yes,
he had
living
to
off
add her and
of
Dubauer.
what was it? Blue cheese and
Oatmeal.
oatmeal.
Blue cheese dressing.
Yeah.
Yeah, blue
It's got
cheese
more
dressing,
calories.
you know.
But
And like,
that wasn't what he was going to live off of. He was going to live off of his Barry field rations.
His,
yeah, the shoe leather.
processed food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They say they can last for years, and probably already have.
This is the
My dad or my grandpa in Germany, he was stationed in Germany, and they inherited like the rations,
Oh,
Oh.
and
good
he
God.
decided he was going to make the entire family eat the rations until they were gone before he would go buy new food.
Ugh.
Okay, total sidebar here.
Oh no!
It was the eating rations. Sorry, Red, you triggered a memory. Are
I'm
all of
sorry.
you aware where the term spam came from, as in spam email?
Uh-huh.
Yes,
Yeah, from Spam,
the
Yes,
like
food.
the canned
because
ham-ish.
after World War II, part of the Marshall Plan was to give the British all of our semi-expired military rations, which included millions of cases of spam, which
we
is why
spam them with
Monty
spam.
Python did a skit about it.
I love that musical.
Spam.
Wonderful spam.
What do we think about a book in 1986 having a bi-male romance interest?
I have to admit, I didn't really pick up the bi-ness of Errol.
It's not relevant in the first 2/3 of the book, but then it just starts getting more and more hints.
No, it's definitely there because the dude
Yeah.
that gets killed and blood is sprayed all over Cordelia, it's very clear in that section that he was a former lover
Mhm.
of Arlen.
Errol.
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 Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
guys.
it's nothing
He's
new.
Arlen in my head.
Especially in a kind of sexual deviant framing, the way it was. I mean,
But
Nero
in our
was
hero,
supposedly bi.
Cordelia does not see it as a deviant. She's just like, yeah, he's bi.
Yeah, she's
makes
not worried
sense.
about it.
No, I mean in a 1986 novel.
Right.
It's,
Well,
it's
that's
like
the thing.
he
Barry
was
sees it as
young,
deviancy,
Mhm.
but Cordelia does not, and he is our protagonist.
right?
Although it's very clear that this guy is deviant in the sense that he clearly likes
I
the
thought we were talking about
torture
Errol.
and the rape. not
Yeah,
not Errol.
Erupture
Yeah.
is weirdo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
guy.
Yeah.
Would I say a little bit of knowledge is dangerous? Just a little bit of the Marquis de Sade is a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you get lots of little science, but it's never explicitly stated.
Mhm. Which I think is very typical of the era.
Yeah.
You know, you get the same type of stuff in Dragonlance. There's lots of little hints about what happened, but nothing is explicit, or very little is.
It's okay. I'm not the best at picking up those kinds of signs, so that's probably why. And if it was more explicit, I don't remember.
Mhm. I mean, unless you're reading Heinlein, you know, the era really tried its best to, you know, PG-13 everything.
Gotcha.
Well, in the other book that she was writing concurrently with this one, Ethan of Athos, she's a lot more explicit and forward with
Not
her.
subtle.
A lot more explicit.
A lot of things, even without that part, the sexuality part, is quite progressive in her
Yes.
perspective.
For our listeners out there, Athos is a planet of only men.
Oh, fun.
Yep.
Okay. What do? Clone each other?
Yes. It's, pretty much.
I believe there was a Star Trek episode about that.
Without getting into
Uterine
spoilers of just
replicators,
going
man, they
on.
can do a lot of things.
Yeah, without getting into spoilers of details, they have female eggs, ovaries that they've imported, and they use uterine replicators with their sperm samples.
Yeah. That's one way to go about it.
I would not want to live there.
Because in their religion, women are the root of all evil.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, well.
is the inverse Amazons.
Yeah. Okay. We have some examples, some very visible examples of how Barryaran culture is barbaric and primitive in this series, but which culture hurts Cordelia the most?
Her own.
I mean,
Her own.
Yeah.
she only has PTSD from one another.
Yeah. Well, I actually have a whole rant about that.
Yeah.
The harm that well-intended, I guess you could call it a well-intended healthcare system, can do when they don't listen to the patient.
So I don't think it was well intended. They at that point. It may have
Well,
started off as well intended, but at the end they were looking for military.
Well, the lady, the shrink, I think she had her own. She didn't actually
That's
listen to
true.
the patient, and so she came up with this theory of what was wrong with her, what was happening. She knew that Cordelia was hiding something, but rather than ask Cordelia or try to understand her, she simply assumed that it must be this because of this, this, this. Everything was perfectly rational, but she just imposed her view on the patient rather than drawing the patient out and being, well, patient with the patient.
To your point, it's in this case, it's the caretaker has a version of a story that they already have in their minds, and they're not really looking to discover and like be curious. They're trying to to pull things out of the patient that validate the version of story they
Exactly.
already.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
That's where
There's
I push
also
back. I don't think that's well intentioned.
that, well, it depends. She believes that her view is correct. So she has pre-diagnosed the patient with the disease she sincerely believes the patient has and goes about trying to cure it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Negri was very impressed.
Yeah. There may also be an aspect of fame seeking in there because if she can discover this massive, subterfuge plot, whatever conspiracy she believes exists, that will guarantee her a promotion as well. And I've talked to people who have told me that while they were in sessions with certain shrinks, they felt like the shrink was just taking notes for their next book and cared more about getting juicy
Mm,
details than actually helping the patient.
yeah.
I mean, that's the famous story of one of the first publicized accounts of what they then called multiple personality disorder.
Mm.
The Many Faces of
It's,
Eve.
yep,
Yeah, it did come off that the psychiatrist, Dr. Meta or Meta
Meta.
or something,
Yeah.
Meta, saw Cordelia as like a puzzle, a challenge to
Mhm.
overcome. Like she was
Mhm.
trying to crack her.
And also an experiment to use her new methods of analysis and her new toys.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we saw something very similar with hypnosis in the 80s and the Satanism scare.
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much. And Project MK Ultra as well in the United States.
That was, that was the CIA. There's no even pretending that was well intended.
Well,
I mean,
as,
this
as a,
was
a
also
military
military. Yeah.
application.
Yeah. I mean, that was a justification for drug
Yeah.
first, ask permission later, is because it's a military matter.
Yeah.
We are not letting you go because we think military secrets are in there.
The sheer amount of human atrocities that have been committed in the name of the greater good.
That's my point. I don't think it was at that point. I don't think they had any intention of caring about Cordelia. They cared about their military secrets.
The Baton psychiatrist is not the only psychiatrist that
No.
Cordelia encounters.
Yes.
She
Mhm.
has the Escobaran
That's true.
psychiatrists.
Yes.
And one actually moves into her room and is her roommate, in quotes.
It is a bit different
No, it
in
is
their
because
approach.
they're not drugging her, but
Right.
she gets so
Right.
freaked out that she doesn't want to sleep because she's afraid she's going to say something.
Right.
And
Right. And they can
I
tell
will
she's
agree with
freaked
that.
out and project their theory of the cause onto her.
Right.
Yes.
I'm just saying that all the psychiatrists in this book
Yeah,
are
no,
bad
it's a systemic
actors.
failure. That's why I don't blame the last shrink. It's a systemic failure.
There was a lovely anti-psychiatry movement in the 80s, and this is not renouncing that exactly.
I mean, psychiatry can be good or it can be bad. I mean,
Yeah.
you
I
just
mean,
have
I
to.
wouldn't have wanted to have been treated by Freud.
I wouldn't want a lobotomy. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no kidding.
Or early electroconvulsive therapy.
Mhm.
or those hot baths.
Well, even these days, half the meds are experimental, and it's like, oh, let's try this and see if it works.
The
Mhm.
Oh, we
mechanism of
have to
action
adjust
isn't
the dosage
known.
because we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Human mind is quite complicated.
Very.
There was that whole, like, demonic, the Satanist cults thing
Mhm.
that was going on in the early '80s that were kind of
Yeah.
encouraged by psychiatrists. "Oh, you're remembering that your teacher took you into the basement and put you in a
Oh,
pentagram
yeah, they
and"
put kids under hypnosis and then fed them
Yeah,
what they
exactly.
wanted the
That's
kids
what
to
I'm saying.
parrot
I
back.
think that's where the anti-psychiatry movement came from in the late '80s, was
And
from that.
Cordelia has literally all of these thoughts
Yeah.
while she's being psychoanalyzed and trying to reject it.
Yeah.
Though the betrayal by her mother was upsetting.
I
Yeah.
feel so bad about that, but I also feel like her mother was so lied to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Her mother was hearing an echo chamber across the planet that says, "This man is evil," and
Right,
my daughter is telling me things that do not align with the truth as I know it.
right. And also that
Mhm.
But
her daughter's
she still
hiding
didn't trust her
something.
daughter.
Right,
Yeah.
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Cordelia is obviously hiding information,
Mhm.
and and the shrinks and military people tell her likely or a possible plausible story for that.
And
Mhm.
Cordelia is terrible at hiding the information and defending herself.
I mean,
And
to
at
be
one
fair,
point,
she
she's
wasn't.
like, "If I was a defense lawyer, I would give all of my clients trauma."
I mean, she literally develops a stutter. She's so self-traumatized.
Yeah.
She's
Well,
not
I'm not
really
saying about that.
trying to hide from her
I'm
mother.
saying that her responses to questions are often like confessions.
Yeah.
Mhm. Which then freak her out more when she realizes what she's done.
Yeah, and confessions that give people entirely the wrong impression of what
Right.
happened. She just
Yeah,
says the
I think that's
wrong
the biggest
thing
thing with her mom.
quite a bit.
She's not trying to hide. She just is bad at explaining it.
I have a question. Is this consistent with the character, or is this more of a plot device so that we get her to Barryar?
I think it's not consistent with her normal character, but it is perhaps consistent with her traumatized character.
I think it's consistent with her actions throughout the series.
I do think that she is a little bit brash and direct
Yeah.
in a way that doesn't always serve her. And we've heard the stories about how she languished in like the career ladder for a while because of how she trusted people to keep their words and say the right things,
Mhm.
specifically her previous partner. And she's very direct and uncompromising with Errol in her conversations, and that
Mhm.
might not work well with anybody else, but it does work with him. I would never say that it's clearly a plot contrivance.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, because
The
we talk about how competent she is as a character, but that's not to say she's not flawed.
Sure. But like everything she did, aside like excluding her inability to explain things to the likings of her psychiatrists, everything she does is very competent in her escape. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I do love the moment where she kicks Steady Freddy in the nuts on stage, televised across the planet.
I didn't vote for him.
Yeah, City Freddy, I didn't vote for him.
I don't think anybody voted for him. It's really weird.
I, I have to believe that in some space version of YouTube, that clip is saved and broadcast.
Someone's turned it into a Feely dream.
Yeah, and he does the classic, hands grabbing and then slowly
And then
tiptoes.
falling. Yeah.
Just the complete lack of her societies. She's like, "I just wanna go home,
Yeah.
hug my mom and go home," and they wanna do this whole parade and have her say things, and she's like
Yeah.
she says on the shuttle, "I just wanna go home, like, I can't deal with this right now."
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, we want to see your authentically surprised face. Well,
Right,
you got it all
and
right.
I mean, that's so cruel.
Bringing
Yeah.
home a prisoner of war and directly into a presidential press conference is
A surprise presidential
soulless.
conference.
Mhm.
you could argue they thought it was well-intentioned because who wouldn't want to be celebrated as,
But
a
she says
Mhm.
national
clearly
hero?
she says that
Yeah.
she doesn't want to on the
Sure.
shuttle. They could have canceled
Yeah.
it, but they didn't.
She's given no choice, no autonomy.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
correct.
she's dressed up in those boots that she says whoever designed these, maybe they do sleep in them.
They're jack boots, by the way.
It's like,
It,
yeah,
it's a
jackboots. Who
military
rides horses
fetish.
on Barrayar?
Bujold has a thing
No,
about boots in this
on
series.
Baton Colony. On Barryar they do use horses. On Beta
Okay,
they do not.
on Beta Colony, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, horses are only in the zoos on Baton Colony.
But I think in that moment, yes, it's more elaborate, it's this whole parade thing, but it is also quite relatable where if,
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying it's unrealistic.
yeah, but it does make me think about, oh, in what instances where I thought that, doing something that I thought was nice for somebody, actually they didn't take it that way, and I made too many of an assumption.
There's absolutely no way that the press secretary thought that this was doing Cordelia a service. They just wanted Cordelia to be part of their press op.
I
Sure.
agree
And
with Kent.
justified it by saying it was a favor.
Yeah.
And she gets this random medal.
Yep.
Mhm.
I mean, that could have been done like 3 weeks or 4 weeks after she had gotten home, she'd settled down.
But
Yeah.
to be fair, I mean, her crew didn't even, thought it
I
was a
don't think
great
they
idea and stuff.
Your crew's a bunch of idiots.
Well, yes,
I
but
mean,
they
they
were
were
the
not
people the
Radnoff
okay,
politicians
they
would have
voted.
asked.
Their crew thought a Barryaran political officer was the good guy on the ship.
Yeah, well.
Well, both
Oh.
their crews are idiots.
Speaking of funny moments, them running into the Barrayar mutineers and, like, stealing or taking their uniform.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We just ran into these guys in the forest and we took their uniforms. Like, they gave it to us.
Mine says Kudelka on it. He was a bad guy.
Right? That's why I think
Yeah.
this book is funny, but all the funny is very, very dark,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A lot of the funny is very dark.
which is my favorite kind of humor.
Like when she's going through rock, paper, scissors during her
Oh,
traumatic
that was
moment.
That's
great.
so
I
good.
love
That's
that.
probably my favorite scene in the entire book.
I
Yeah.
was just thinking that when I was listening to it this time through.
Yeah. So that's my favorite scene. Should we end with everybody else giving theirs?
I've already echoed Kip. This is mine as well.
Yeah, I have to go with Kit. That's my favorite scene. It's such a fun way of dealing with her emotional tension and
You feel the frenzy.
right.
Panda?
I don't know. Come back to me. Seeker, go next.
Seeker.
Well, the only scene that's popping into my head right now is when she's talking to the cargo freighter captain. Yeah.
For sure.
You'll meet a lot of high ups in security service when you get back.
Yeah.
Why are you wearing slippers? Classified.
I will say I grouped that whole section into my favorite, but maybe individual would still be with the rock paper scissors scene. But the whole section is my favorite.
I think my favorite is all the to the point of the humor being quite dark is how Bujold tackles sexual assault where the captors assault the prisoners and
Mhm.
end up with all these fetuses and
Oh, that was brilliant.
the like putting it in the face of the perpetrators.
Mhm.
Right? Even though
Yeah.
the individuals may not have perpetrated, but it was their society, it was their side that did it, and they're like, "What are we supposed to do with these?"
Yeah.
These
And how
And the doctor
17
goes,
unborn.
"Thought you'd dump them on us, did you?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
The
I
med
think
deck was great.
that whole sequence was brilliant, and also the follow-up to it where, okay, it's time for a birthing, basically, and how that whole exchange happened, and Bathari, like, making the decision to adopt and really, like, own up to, his actions, taking responsibility.
Yeah.
So, the only thing I want to add, this isn't my favorite scene, but she is talking to Cordelia is talking to Errol, and they're talking about the men on the ship, and she's never been on a gender singular ship, so there's only men on the ship. And she says, "Oh, poor lambs." He's like, "I wouldn't call them that. They think they're like the masters of the universe,
They're the
basically."
wolves, the
Right.
alphas.
Mhm.
And then she
And she's
says,
like,
I
"I would sacrificial."
was thinking more
Yeah.
about animal sacrifice. Oh, well,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
fits then.
And
Yeah.
it's poignant, but it's also a little bit funny. But yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, there's a reason that male frontal cortex doesn't fully develop till we're like 27.
Definitely earlier than that, but
I don't know. I've heard everything from 24 to 27. So,
well, they used to think that the brain stopped evolving and stopped growing, but it never really does.
It's probably a
mm,
range. There's deviance.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's supposed to control the risk assessment. And it's like, yeah, definitely the younger you are, the more you're willing to do really stupid stuff.
Well, in men, it
As a
actually
dude, at least.
it moves across the brain during adolescence. It disappears from one spot and then later reappears in another.
Oh my God. Now this is all new. I know nothing about any of this.
Just about the uterine replicator scene, I think it's very important to note that none of the men and none of the Baryarans are initially in support of keeping any of the fetuses alive.
Yeah.
And it's Cordelia
Yeah.
that makes that change and convinces Errol to move heaven and earth to ensure that they can survive.
And the
Yep.
way that she does it, right?
Mhm.
This is that leadership aspect coming out where she knows the audience. She's appealing to what that audience, that doctor
Mhm.
would be interested in. It's like, think about the technology aspect of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which promptly makes the doctor want to drain out
Right.
the living tissue and start dissecting the machine.
He's not a moral bright spot in this book. But thank you for joining us on our first episode of the Vorkosigan Saga. This has been the Legendarium Green Team. Thank you to Horizon Brave for getting this all started. Thank you, Craig, for loaning us this corner of your media empire. And thank you to the Jingle Punks for our intro and outro music, Galactic Damages. It's been a blast, and I will be back with all of you on Barrier.
Oh, but what about
Woo.
Aftermath?
Oh,
We
we
did
didn't talk
Aftermath.
about it.
Oh,
Oh.
true. We did not
Well,
talk
we
at
can
all
talk
about
about it before
Aftermath.
Barrier.
Red, do you want to say something about Aftermath? It is your favorite part. It's out of all of us, I think it's your favorite.
I just love the gentle care that this woman is going through this battlefield that's in outer space. And she's like, "Oh, and here's this little thing in this person's pocket, and here's this little thing." And she gathers it all up. She washes all the bodies despite wherever they come from. And then to prepare them to go back to their family, and then she finds her daughter's body. And she
Yeah.
dresses her
Mhm.
in her wedding dress because she was supposed to get married. And instead she died. And the pilot was, like, all creeped out, and then when
Uh-huh.
he followed her trajectory, just giving loving care to the dead, he changes and it starts to help her, and I just thought that
Mhm.
was just so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I have to say.
I agree with Red that the aftermath, which is the epilogue in Shards of Honor, at least in my copy, it was unexpected. I did not know that it would be such a shift. And it was just such a nice little arc going through the journey with, honestly, with the pilot, because you don't know much about Bonnie and her backstory, and you find things out as the pilot finds things out, and
Yeah.
that was a nice touch.
Yeah. Especially because the ends of the book Shards of Honor is actually pretty abrupt, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So having Aftermath as an epilogue is great.
And do you guys catch that it was probably Prince Serg who was the Baryarn
Yes.
officer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it was a really good point because there is that theme throughout this book about Bujold's perspective on war and how useless and dumb it is, and it's
Wasteful.
just exactly, it's very wasteful. And even though Crown Prince Serg was not the best person, he was still somebody's son. He was still a person, a human. People
Mhm.
poured time into them.
Hmm.
I have to wonder if she lost a family member in battle the way she's so visceral about it, because I mean that's not well. Okay, during World War I, women would go around the country handing out white feathers to any men who had not enlisted. which was a cultural way of calling them cowards.
Mm.
And so, and then there's the Spartan thing where the women would tell their men, come back with your shield or on it. And so women have been just as bloody minded as anybody else throughout history.
Mhm.
Yeah. Women can buy into propaganda as much as men can, for sure.
Yeah,
I
Mhm.
mean,
that's true.
as we see with her mom.
Unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I wasn't referring to propaganda. I was referring to the assumption is that women will be more compassionate by default. And I'm just like, I think the hostility is just manifested in a different way,
Hmm.
stereotypically.
Right.
I don't think that's really brought up in this book, though.
No, not really. It's just, well, the compassionate side is, not the aggressive side.
Eh,
Oh, the
Because
psychiatrist was kind of
yeah.
aggressive.
We see a bunch of harm done by women who think they're being moral.
right, yes.
Yeah.
I think that's the end of our episode, and enjoy editing, Panda.
Means I have absolutely no idea what anyone else is doing over this Wi-Fi.
Wait, what?
My gosh, I so need to get new glasses.
Do you want new eyeballs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm actually seriously considering getting,
LASIK?
yeah,
I want new eyeballs.
my eyeballs suck, and they've been getting worse. The frickin' frick.